Good morning, church. Let us say the prayer for illumination. Together, prepare our hearts, O God, to accept your word. Silence us any voice but your own, that hearing we may also obey your will. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. This morning's scripture lesson is taken from Philippians chapter 2, verses 1 to 5. Philippians chapter 2, verses 1 to 5. Imitating Christ's humility. If you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any fellowship with the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and purpose. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. Each of you should look not only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others. Your attitude should be the same as that of Jesus Christ. This is the word of the Lord.
Here's some money.
What do we got here?
Hello. I'm her daddy.
Look at the cute dog.
Patient has a fractured fibula, given a mild sedative, so I could be able to go on tomorrow.
Daddy's gonna be so excited.
Oh, good.
That killed him.
Paging Dr. Palmer, Dr. Barbara Palmer, dial 452.
Hi, can I get a quarter with change?
Oh, excuse me.
Sorry.
Oh, Kevin.
Sarah!
Hi. So what are you doing?
Dude, I forgot your wallet. Ow.
I don't hate your mother. Morning, Bev.
Okay, praise the Lord. You know, we're continuing our series today, Relationship Killers. And one of the things, just for the benefit of those of you who have not been following us, and I know it's not your fault, okay, we have been having so many breaks in between this series. What we are doing is basically we're looking at habits or attitudes in our lives that is detrimental to relationships, that kills and destroys relationships. And one of those that we're going to talk about today, the first time we talked about anger, the second time we talked about dissatisfaction. Today, we're going to talk about negative thoughts. Negative thoughts. I mean, if you think about it, oftentimes, before things goes bad in a relationship, before I start to don't like you, you don't like me, I hate you, you hate me, I resent you, you resent me, before all of that comes about, it usually begins in the mind. It usually begins in, the thought, before we get angry at the person, before we resent the person, if we begin to think about why we resent that person, what he did to me, what's happening. And a lot of times, it all begins in the mind. It's a mind play, it's a mind game, actually. And all of us go through that. I suffer a lot of that as well. And I suffer it most of the time when I'm driving. When I'm driving, and somehow it happens, especially in this area, the Kampong Road areas, especially in like for instance from here to Port Dickson or from here to Segama, all the small trunk roads around Malacca. And a lot of times when I'm driving, I want to make good timing, okay? So the speed limit is about 70 to 90 depending on which stretch of the road it is. And I'll try to drive at what the speed limit is. And very often, I will get stuck behind a small little tortoise. The guy will be driving so slow in front of me. And the minute, whenever I encounter such people, either they drive so slow, or they drive weirdly, or they do funny antics on the road. Okay, before I continue, I need to apologize to half of the church, and I need to apologize to the other half later on as well. But I just want to be transparent to you all, okay? Just to let you know how I struggle with negative thoughts and how our mind works, all right? So don't be angry with your pastor, okay? I just stand under your grace for a moment. And so when I'm driving, and the moment I encounter these drivers, the first thing that came to my mind was, this must be a lady driver. And the second thing that comes to my mind, I say, if it's not a lady driver, it must be a very old man. And I don't know why, okay? It's just a natural thought that comes into me. So please forgive me. Please be nice. Please don't crucify your pastor. All right? But you see, it's not just that. And very often, you just drive and I get just so impatient behind them. And the more I get impatient, and the thoughts will start coming to me. I say, if you don't know how to drive, don't drive. If you don't know how to read the speed limit, why are you on the road? If you can't drive, you don't deserve to be on the road. I think if it's a lady driver, then I'll say, why not you get your husband to drive for you instead? And if it's an old man, then I'll say, why not you stop driving? You are a hazard to the road. And I've been thinking, and all these thoughts will come and fill my mind. And I begin to think about how inconsiderate that person is for driving so slow. If you are driving so slow, you should at least drive at the shoulder of the road so that people can overtake you. And I'll begin to think, you know how much time you waste for other people? I know your life is very slow and relaxed. There's no pressure in your life. There is no rush in your life. You just have such a nice, easy life. But other people are busy people. We don't have your luxury. So can't you think of other people? And all this will be going on in my mind. I don't even know the fella. I don't even know who it is. And the minute one day, and I just finally I managed to, recently I finally managed to come out. And I managed to drive. And I managed to overtake that person. And finally, when I overtake the person, I look at it. Who is that that's driving? Okay, I'm not going to tell you whether it's a lady or old man. But the minute when after I pass by and I look at him, and I see the person struggling a bit. And just at that second, the Lord spoke to me and said, where's your compassion? You're just so full with all these negative thoughts. You're thinking the worst of that person, but you never know. It could be that he has no one in his life to bring him around. It could be that he's struggling with, who knows, cataract or glaucoma or whatever. And he needs to get from point A to point B. And there's nobody in his life who he can depend on but himself to do it. Where's your compassion? And at that moment, I just realized that, ouch. You know, when the Lord rebukes you, it's painful. It's painful. And I'm here saying, you know, what's wrong with me? Here I am, a pastor, making enemies with a complete stranger whom I don't even know their name. The only thing I know is the number plate. And I'm not going to track it down to find out who he is. And all of it, I'm just making an enemy out of a stranger because of the thoughts that come into my mind. And many times we suffer that. When people do things to us, when people does things that we find not used to, we condemn them in our minds. We look at the fellow and say, how can you do such thing in our minds? You see, a normal human being won't do that. People who are kind-hearted won't do that. People who are well-mannered, who are brought up well, won't do that. What's wrong with you? Do you have an attitude problem? And we do that all in our minds. Even before we can speak to each other, even before we can clarify, even before we can see each other, we've already condemned the person in our mind. Isn't that true? Just take Sunday worship, for example. You come to church on Sunday. Suddenly you come and then you see, someone set your favorite spot straight away. This fella, so insensitive one. Doesn't know that I sit there every Sunday, is it? This is my spot. Why you want to fight with me, is it? Already you already got this, and then you still want to fight with me now, steal my spot. Or we come to church someday and we walk past a person and one of our brothers and sisters didn't smile at us. And we look at the fellow and say, so unfriendly. Why so proud, so arrogant, so snobbish? What's wrong with me? I'm not good enough for you to smile at? I'm not good enough to be a friend to you? And we begin to think all the worst about people. The same goes in our office. When our colleagues do something, and the true also happens in our homes. When our husband does something, we don't fight, we don't quarrel, we don't argue, but our minds go wild. When our wives didn't do something that she should do, our minds go wild. Because we have no control, we do not discipline our mind. And even before we know what's happened, we've already condemned that person, we're already so angry with the person, and although our relationship is not broken physically, but emotionally, it's already broken. Emotionally, I'm angry, I'm hurt, I'm irritated with that person. And it strained our relationship. And so you see, a lot of the battle happens in the mind. That's where the first battle starts. It always starts in the mind. That's why Philippians 2 says this, fulfill my joy by being like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord, of one mind. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind. In lowliness of mind, or in some versions it says in humility of mind. It starts in the mind, to have a mind that is humble, a mind that is lowly, a mind that doesn't condemn people, and in that mind, let each esteem others better than ourselves. Let us look at others and see them better than how we would see ourselves. You see, it's so important for us to realize this. You know why? Because would you write me the first point of your notes is this, that our head is connected to our hearts. Our heads are connected to our hearts. Isn't that true? What we think is what we feel. That's why the Bible says in Matthew 6, it says this, the lamp of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye is good, your whole body will be full of light. The lamp of the body is your eye, what you see, your eye. Do you know, but actually in reality you don't, it basically says that the lamp of your body is what you see. And do you know that you don't see with your eyes actually? You don't see with your eyes, you know. Your eyes are nothing more than optic lenses which absorbs light. The light will fall on the back of the eye, the retina or whatever, and from there it forms an image. It hits the senses of the eyes. And what sees is actually your brain. Because your brain will then receive all this light input. And your brain will then interpret what this senses means, what this light input means, to be the image that you see. So we don't actually see with our eyes. We see with our minds. We see with our brains. And what the Lord is saying is how you see things, how you perceive things in your mind. If it is good, your whole body will be good. Your whole self will be good. The way you behave, the way you feel, the way you treat others, the way you do everything, it will all be good. But if what you see is always negative, you look at people and you see scoundrels. You look at people and you see people backstabbers. You look at people and you see selfish people. And all that you see is all that you receive. Your whole body will be like that. Because our head is connected to our hearts. You think angry thoughts, you will feel angry. You think hateful thoughts, you will feel hatred. You think unforgiveness things that are about unforgiveness, you will feel unforgiveness. You think of love, you feel love. You think of friendships, you'll be friendly. You think of kindness, you are kind and compassionate. It all depends on what you think. And that's why Proverbs 4:23 says, guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. What we think affects what we feel. And what we feel affects how we react. And how we react affects the way we relate to one another. And how we relate to one another determines the entire course of our lives. And so it goes back to the heart. How we feel, how we think affects how we feel for one another. How we feel for another affects our reactions. How we react and how we relate to one another affects the entire course of our lives. A story is told. I'm not sure it's a true story or an internet story or whatever it is. But a story is told of a father who was frantic at the hospital because his son just had an accident. And they're waiting for the doctor to arrive. And he's sitting there, just so frantic and so angry, and the doctor is still not here yet. And finally, when the doctor entered the room in a hurry for being called in for the surgery, he changed his clothes and went directly to the surgery room, and he found the boy's father there panting up and down. The minute the father sees him, the father yelled, "Why did you take all this time to come? Don't you know that my son's life is in danger? Don't you have any sense of responsibility? You're a doctor, your job is to save lives, not to let people who are in dire need wait for you." And the doctor smiled and said, "I'm sorry, I wasn't in the hospital. And I came as fast as I could, and I need you to calm down so that I can do my work." Calm down? You expect me to calm down? What if it was your son in that room? What if it was your son who was lying on the surgery table at an inch of his life? You think I'm going to calm down? How can you be so insensitive to talk like that? The father was just so angry. The doctor smiled, "We'll do our best." And he went in. The father murmured to himself, giving advice at a time like this. Who does he think he is? The surgery took some time. It took hours. After which the doctor came out looking happy and said, "Thank goodness your son is saved." And without waiting for the father's reply, he just rushed off and said, "If you have any questions, please ask the nurse." And the doctor ran off. The father looked at the nurse and said, "Why is this doctor so arrogant? Can't even spend a few minutes to tell me what's going on with my son, what's his condition, what happened. What's wrong with this kind of doctor? Why do we have this kind of doctor in this hospital?" The nurse looked at the father with tears coming down her face and said, "His son, the doctor's son, died yesterday in a road accident similar like your son's. He was at the burial when we called him for your son's surgery. And now, after saving your son, he is left running to finish burying his son." Sometimes we just don't know. We just don't know what's happening on the other side. But we are just too quick to think, too quick to judge. So what do we do then? Would you write me the second point of your note? Seek to understand the heart rather than to judge the performance. Seek to understand the heart rather than to judge the performance. You see, oftentimes we see what a person does and we judge their entire character, their entire attitude, their entire motives based on one action of that person. Just because that person drives slowly, I'm able to judge his entire attitude and character and personality just based on him driving slowly on the road. And sometimes we do that. Just because of one performance, one act by a person, we judge a whole lifetime of that person. And we need to realize, friends, that a lot of times we don't get it right. And when we pass judgment so easily, we are condemning a person in our minds. Even before we get to know, even before we realize what's happening, even before we understand the heart of the person, we condemn a person in our minds. And we don't realize what's going on in their hearts. You know, another example again was driving in Malacca again. Like I said, I don't know what happened. I don't have this problem in KL, you know. I drive in KL, in PJ, everything is nice and smooth. I don't have this problem. But in Malacca, I get very irritated driving, very stressed driving in Malacca. I just don't know why. All right? And one of these things that happened to me recently was this as well. I was driving, and again, weird people on the road. You know, we come to a traffic light. You know, in traffic light, there's always a slip road for you to like turn left, that kind of thing. And I want to turn left. And I was waiting there, and the guy in front of me was just blocking the slip road by an inch. And he had like maybe a mile ahead of him from the other car. And he just wouldn't move forward. I drive nearer and nearer, and I keep inching my car as near as I could. I almost touched his bumper. No reaction. The guy just doesn't move. And these traffic lights in Malacca, you know, it takes about 10 minutes, 1 hour to change lights on, right? And this guy just doesn't move. And I sit there and I stare at him. I look at him. I stare at him from my mirror. I stare. I can see his back mirror. From his rear view mirror, I can see his eyes. And I'm staring into that eyes. Move! And he just doesn't move. I don't know what's going on. He just doesn't move. And finally, the light turned green. He moves a bit. I speed in front of him. Drive off. A few days later, I was at the same traffic light. I drove my car and I parked there. And I do not know what happened that day. For some reason, I was just tired or what. I was in a daze. I was just sitting there waiting for the light to turn green. And the lights are so slow, right? I can actually take a nap while waiting for it to turn. And so I was sitting there and I was just thinking like, what's wrong with the light? And I'm just, thinking through things, just relaxing, resting myself. What I didn't realize was my car was also slightly blocking the slip road. And the guy behind of me couldn't pass. And I had like, not a mile, but maybe a few inches in front of me which I could move forward. But I was just sitting there and just completely in a daze. I just relaxed and I just don't know what's going on. I just enjoying the scenery, calming myself down. And before I realized it suddenly, when the light turned green, and I realized, this guy is there. He's been there for a long time. And he didn't horn, he didn't do anything. And I was like, sorry, quickly. And I tried to move. And there's a moment the Lord spoke to me and said, you see, you do the same thing. And I'm not evil. I'm not cruel. I'm not insensitive. And my motive was not to make life miserable for that guy. But when I was the other guy, I thought of all that. I was saying, this guy is terrible. He's a lousy driver, insensitive, doesn't care about people on the road, no road ethics. And I realized sometimes that how wrong I could get. How wrong I could be. Because when I judge others, I too can do the same thing. And so, rather than passing judgment so fast, we need to realize that sometimes people do things for complete different reasons, for complete unintentional mistakes, for whatever reasons. And a lot of times we just judge their performance and we don't realize the heart that goes with it. We don't realize the motives that goes with it. Sometimes even the good things that people do, we judge it wrongly because we just don't understand each other. And that's why the Bible says in Philippians 2:3 says, but in lowliness of mind, esteem each other as better than himself. Esteem each other better than himself. So instead, rather than judging people's performance so fast, we need to do what James 1:19 says, let everyone be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Quick to hear, don't talk about listening to what people talk, but quick to hear means quick to understand. Quick to understand why people do what they do, rather than being so quick to be angry, so quick to speak. In other words, don't be quick to judge, but be quick to understand. Be slow to judge, but be quick to understand. And we need to learn to understand. Because you see, friends, even people who are doing good can be misunderstood. You know, I remember there was a time someone was saying, even simple things like giving out bulletins in the church. Some people will be giving out. And sometimes, one time there was this person, okay, not in Malacca, okay, don't worry, so don't look who it is. Another person came and said, oh, since there's not enough ushers, I will just help out. And he just came and he just took the bulletin and helped out giving. And the usher was sitting there and said, who is this fella? Why come and intrude into why is so busybody? Come and disturb us doing our job. Does he think we're not doing a good job? And you see how easy it is for someone with a good intention to help could easily be misunderstood as doing something evil and rotten. Because if we don't learn to slow down, to understand one another's heart, we strain relationships. Why is that so important? Why is it so difficult to understand one another's heart? Very simple, because we're all different people. Each and every one of us, we are all different people. We come from different planets. We come from different worlds, different planets. Some of us come from different universes. We're just so different. We think differently. We act differently. Our spouse, our neighbors, our family, our children, all of us, we are just so different in nature. In the way we think, in the way we operate, we are just so different from one another. Especially in families, let me tell you, my wife and I, in the early years of our marriage, I tell you, it was shocking because it's like living with an alien from another planet. You ever watch the show last time? There's this show I say, Not of This World. There was this sitcom series or something like that. It was, I tell you, and even small things, we will just clash over. Let me give you an example. Simple things like drying clothes. Drying clothes, when you wash clothes in the washing machine, then you take them out to dry, you hang them on the hangers, on the clothesline to dry your clothes. Even simple things like that, because you see, I was brought up with being a very functional person. My family was functional, my dad was a very functional. Everything we do, everything we buy is always for a functional purpose. We don't really care about beauty, comfort, aesthetic, it's all functional. Okay? We buy a car, we just make sure it functionally works. We don't care if the car has a bad ugly color or a pretty color, as long as the car moves, it's functional. So when it comes to hanging clothes, I'm a very functional person. So what I want to do is, we want to make sure that the clothes are dried the fastest and the most efficient way and effective way to dry the clothes. And so when you take pants, for example, you will hang them on those, those hangers with the round shaped hangers? So you put them in the pants, and so it will look as though a fat guy is wearing the pants. So I will put them all like that. And I'll arrange the clothes all in such a way that based on the angle of sunlight, where your sun rises in the house, right? It rises on that side. So based on the angle where it will come in, I'll make sure the right clothes are there so that the sun will hit it. And when the sun goes on top, it will then dry the remaining clothes that has yet to be dried. And that's how I hang clothes. My wife, on the other hand, grew up in a different environment, all right? They are not so technical, and so they have more about, she's more artistic. They like things to be nice and pretty. The family used to like to put flowers in the house and decorate this, decorate that. Those kind of families that decorate things. So she likes things to be nice and pretty. And so when it comes to hanging clothes, she will say, no, okay, clothes, we want to hang a shirt. If the shirt is inside out, you put it outside in properly so that it looks, rather than having it inside out, you put it out properly and you hang it nicely. No way will you allow pants to be in such an ugly looking way that look like a fat man. So you fold it nicely across the bars so that it be neat and tidy. And lo and behold, as good Asian people, Chinese, we must not show off our dirty laundries, dirty stuff, right? So all underwear and bras and things like that has to be well hidden behind towels and whatever else, and you have to hang it behind. And for me, it's like, No way. You know, you want those to dry, right? Those things are very spongy, it absorbs water. It needs a lot of sunlight. You can't put it behind towels. It will never dry. You have to put it in front of the towels where it's full view for the whole world to see. Then it will dry. You see how easy it is? We clash. We argue over what? Hanging clothes. You see, friends, how easy it is for people to be so different-minded over a simple thing. Over a simple thing in life. We are just so differently minded. And we just get into, and you just try to multiply that. Not just with hanging clothes, with boiling water, with folding clothes, with bed sheets, with driving, with everything else in life. You multiply that with your neighbors in church whom you even know less. And you start seeing them do things the way they do and you wonder, what's wrong with this fella? Huh? Is this an attitude problem? Is there something wrong with him? And we begin to judge, we begin to pass judgment on one another. And we don't realize that it's just because we are different. It's not because they're inherently evil. It's just because they're different. You know, I've realized in life today, after my many years of my life, I've come to realize this one truth. And I hope you all realize this today as well. That nobody wakes up in the morning and thinks to himself, how can I make life miserable for that person? Nobody does that. Wives, listen, your husband don't wake up in the morning and say, okay, what can I do today to irritate my wife? He doesn't do that. Husbands, your wife doesn't wake up in the morning and say, okay, what a nice fine morning. Okay, what can I start nagging my husband about today? They don't do that. But somehow in the midst of things, we think that they are inherently evil. We think that their life purpose is to make life miserable for us. We think that their life purpose is to get at us, to punish us, to make life miserable for us. It's just not true. But the reality is just because we are different people. We think differently, we look at things differently, we see things in a different angle, in a different light. And so rather than judging a performance, we need to understand the heart. We need to take time and effort to understand each other's hearts. And so today, my wife and I, until today, we don't hang clothes together. We never do that. But it doesn't mean I don't help. Sometimes when I'm free, I help. This is what I do. I will take the clothes, I will take it out, I will put it nicely, I'll pass it to her and she hangs it. I'll take the next one, straighten it, everything, and I'll pass it to her and she hangs it. You see? We work things out. We work things out. All right? But that's what we do. When you try to understand one another. When you try to understand and not judge a person's performance, you try to understand one another. So how do we do that? How do we correct this? The next point you'll notice is this: train your mind to think rightly. Train your mind. You see, friends, if you're always having negative thoughts about people, it's because your minds have been trained over the years to think negatively. You've trained your mind to always think the worst, to think the negative. And let's face it, we're humans. What we are trained to do, we get used to doing, it becomes a habit. It becomes automatic. And so we need to train our minds to do the opposite. We need to train our mind to change the opposite. You see, I realized this truth one day when I was talking to Pastor Danny. I can't remember, I think it was the Pastor Danny. And we're talking about some church member about something, some people did something. And I was, I don't think it's church member, I was a track pastor, I can't remember someone. And I was explaining to him, saying, maybe the person did it. And I gave a whole theory about why the person does what he did. And Danny was looking at me and saying, wow, you can actually think of it that way. It's like, he never even thought of it. He never even saw it. He said, oh, you can think like that also. And after he left, I was thinking to myself, I'm clever, ma. I'm a smart guy. I know people well. And then after he left, but after a while, the Lord spoke to me and said, nah, it's not because you're smart, not because you're clever, but because you are as rotten as the other person you think he is. You see, you know what I say? It takes one to know one. Basically, what I'm saying is this. You see, when we think negatively of a person, it's not because we think we know him very well, but because what we are doing is we are projecting ourselves in that person's shoes. And we are saying that's how I would behave. You get what I'm saying? It's like this. Let's say I'm standing here. Okay, come, Danny, come here for Okay, let's see I'm standing here and Danny is there. Okay, and then one day I walk past, Danny didn't smile at me. Okay, sour face, please, sour face, didn't smile. Okay, and then now straight away my mind is thinking, this guy is arrogant. He doesn't even look at me worthy enough to give a smile. Such an arrogant person, call himself a pastor. But what actually I'm doing is this. I look at him, I see he didn't smile, right? So what I'm doing is I'm imagining if I was him. Okay, now you go that side. All right, if I was him, and if I didn't smile to a person, why I wouldn't smile? It's because I don't think that fella worth my smile. Because I don't think that fella, I am a bit arrogant. I don't like that fella. And so actually what I'm thinking is, if I was Danny, what would I say, what would I think when my action? And now I come back here, when I look at him, I'm passing judgment, but in reality, I'm judging my character. I'm judging my attitude if I were in his position. You get what I'm saying? Thank you. Thank you. All right, and that's what we do. And so what happened, and that's why the Bible says in Mark 7:20, it says, what comes out of a man that defiles him? From within, out of the heart, proceed evil thoughts. All the evil thoughts, the negative thoughts that we have of each other, it comes not from that person, but it comes from my own heart. From my heart. Remember, the head is connected to the heart. Whatever your heart, how evil and rotten your heart is, that affects the way your head thinks. And when your head thinks those evil thoughts, it makes your heart more rotten and more evil. It's connected. And that's what happens. When I pass judgment, it's because I've been sowing seeds of bitterness in my heart all these years. I've been sowing negative seeds in my heart all these years. And one thing I need to start doing is, I need to start filling my heart with positive thoughts. That's why Paul goes on to say, in Philippians 2, he says, be like-minded, esteem one another. And in chapter 4, he says, finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are good report, if there is any virtue, if there's anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. You see, Paul was giving this conclusion at the end of the book of Philippians. The whole book of Philippians is talking about unity, about humility, about being one in God. And then he concludes by saying, meditate on all the good things in life, on all the virtues, on everything that, in other words, what Paul is saying is, sow good thoughts in your hearts. Sow good thoughts. And when you sow good thoughts, what you're doing is you're training your hearts to think rightly. You're training your hearts to think well of others, to think well of people. You're training yourself to think. But it takes time. It takes time. I still get irritated with drivers on the road. It takes time. The thoughts still come. It takes time. But you see, friends, the reason why it takes time, because you have your heart that is full of sowing bad seeds all these years. You have been sowing bad thoughts, bad seeds, anger, negative. You judge people's body. You've been sowing all those bad thoughts all these years. Now you start to sow good thoughts, good seeds. But what's happening? The bad seeds that you have been sowing, they are now growing out. They are growing. They need to grow and they need to be weeded out before the good seeds will take fruit. It takes time. And while it takes time, the bad thoughts will still come. Negative thoughts will still come. When I drive on the road, I see a lot of drivers. Nowadays, there's another thing I do. I see and I check the number plate. Is it a W or M number plate before I judge? But the thoughts will still come. Negative thoughts will still come. And what do we do about it? The last point of your notes is this. Shorten your response time. Shorten your response time. Friends, because our hearts are evil, the bad seeds that we have sowed all this while, it will produce negative thoughts automatically. Before you realize it, the thoughts will come. Before you realize you're having a bad thought, the thoughts will come. It comes in a blink of a second. But the question is, how fast does it take for us to respond? Do you sit there and dwell on it and curse the fella and pass judgment on another fella? Or do you allow yourself to respond quick enough and say, No, this is not what I need. This is not how I want to think. This is not how I should think. No, this is the negative thought. I know where this is coming from. I know this is coming from all the evil in my heart. I don't have these thoughts. I need to change. I need to have a quick response time. You know what's a response time, reaction time, response time? You know baseball players, you know what's baseball or not? American favorite pastime, the baseball. Baseball players, when they hold the bat, they have a very, very short second to react. Because the baseball flies at about 90 to 100 miles per hour. And so from the time the person throws the ball, for the time to reach the bat, it is less than half a second. Less than that. And from that less than half a second, they have to have a reaction time fast enough to see how the person throw, where the person throw, how fast that person is throwing, which angle he's throwing, all that in half a second to hit it. And that's a reaction time. The lousier players, the less professional players, have a very long response time. The really professional ones, they have a very fast response time. Even before they throw, they know where to hit. They have a very fast response time. And because they train it, because they train themselves to have a fast response time. And one way they train themselves is by doing this. I told you, right, the baseball goes at 90 to 100 miles per hour. So one form of training to improve your response time is to practice with a machine that shoots the baseball at 120 to 130 miles per hour. So you practice at a high speed. And as you practice at a high speed, you get used to the lowest, when it comes to the lowest speed, your reaction times becomes faster. And so they had to practice. They had to practice by sowing, by practicing with higher speed. And same thing for us. We need to train ourselves by practicing, by filling ourselves with good seeds. And when negative thought comes, we need to just react. When a negative thought comes, we just need to cancel it. When it just comes up, we just need to cancel it and replace it with positive thoughts. Replace it by trying to understand a person's heart. Replace it by not judging. And it's all within the mind. It all happens in a split second, and it all happens in nanoseconds. But as we practice, as we train ourselves, you will find your response time reduces. You're faster. It takes you faster to respond. In the past, it takes you months before you change your mind about that person. As you practice, as you sow good seeds, you realize it takes maybe minutes, maybe it takes seconds. And before that, you realize negative thoughts don't come so often anymore. But it starts by sowing good seeds. I just want to close with one short video about judging people without understanding what is happening. Let us see the videos. เห็นแล้วสิโอ้ยมันไม่อยู่แล้ว That is an extreme. Hello. Okay. That was an extreme case. But the same goes true for everything. When we don't learn to understand, we strain relationships, we damage relationships among us. Let us stand to our feet as we close. Let's purpose in our hearts this morning. And let us not judge one another, but let us seek to understand and think of others better than ourselves.